Well, good morning. Welcome in, everyone. Wow, got a full chat, you guys. Andy, if you can't, man, we totally understand if you can't be here the whole time. Avid, welcome in. Tony Walsh, welcome in. Scotty, welcome in. Let's see who else is in there. Rebecca's being said hi to, but I do not see Rebecca in the chat. But welcome in, Rebecca. Today is November the 5th, 2024, and we're going to be in Proverbs 5 that syncs up with that date. That stuff popping up on my computer. Rebecca is here. Good morning. I don't know why, Rebecca, you don't show up. Other people say hi to Rebecca and you don't show up, and then you're here anyhow. So, good morning anyhow. Welcome in. Let's get started. Hopefully, Andy, if you have to go, we understand, but maybe we'll get all the way through it. Get your armor on before you go. The peril of adultery, verse 1, chapter 5. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Lend your ear to my understanding, that you may preserve discretion and your lips may keep knowledge. And the first one, there's a note with verse 3 through verse 14. For the lips of an immoral woman drip honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lie hold of hell. Least you ponder her path of life. Her ways are unstable. You do not know them. Therefore, hear me now, my children, and do not depart from the words of my mouth. Remove your way far from her, and do not go near the door of her house. Lest you give your honor to others, and your years to the cruel one. And lest aliens be filled with your wealth, and your labors go to the house of the foreigner, and you mourn at last, when your flesh and your body are consumed, and say, how I have hated instruction, and my heart despised correction. I have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined my ear to those who instruct me. I was on the verge of total ruin in the midst of the assembly and congregation. And let's go look at that note now. Mortality and martial faithfulness can never be thrust aside without paying the price. An illicit life robs its purveyors of honor and years. Family fidelity satisfies best. Now, verse 3, let's run back up to verse 3. There's a note on verse 3. It says, for the lips of an immoral woman drip honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. And the note says, really having a light problem this morning. In Israel, the term immoral woman refers to one of three things: idolaters who were outside the covenant, Israelites who had once walked with God but turned aside to worship other gods, those in Israel who were unfaithful to their husbands. Each of these contexts speaks of betrayal and forsaking a covenant. Hey, James Hall, welcome in. See you jumped in there. Okay, let's jump to verse 11. There's a note on verse 11. It says, and you mourn at last, when your flesh and your body are consumed. This could be speaking of the person's fate in Sheol, or it could refer to sexually transmitted diseases and other physical ailments that can affect people who commit adultery. Now, verse 12 through 14 also has a note. So at 12, and say, how I have hated instruction, and my heart despised correction. I have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined my ear to those who instruct me. I was on the verge of total ruin in the midst of the assembly and congregation. And the note says, to hate instruction, despise correction, and ignore the voice of teaching makes a person susceptible to choices full of remorse. Falling prey to lust leads inevitably to the ruin or disgrace of a person's reputation within their community. And that would be bad stuff. Bad stuff. All right, verse 15. We're finally picking back up at verse 15. Verse 15 through 20 has a note. Drink water from your own cistern and running water from your own well. Should your fountains be dispersed abroad, streams of water in the streets, let them be only your own and not the for strangers with you. Let your fountains be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth as a loving deer and a graceful doe. Let her breast satisfy you at all times and always be enraptured with her love. For why should you, my son, be enraptured by an immoral woman and be embraced in the arms of a seductress? And the note there from verse 15 through 20. In this passage, the fountains and streams are images used to illustrate sex and its boundaries of propriety. Pictured here is the foolishness of sexual promiscuity and should neither seek sex. One should neither seek sex from anyone other than his nor offer it to anyone other than his or her spouse. And now back up to verse 18. 18 through 20 has a note. We'll go through that. Verse 18, let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth, and as a loving deer and a graceful doe, let her breast satisfy you all at all times, and always be enraptured with her love. For why should you, my son, be enraptured by an immoral woman and be embraced in the arms of a seductress? Now back down to the note, it says, in erotic language that is similar to the imagery in the Song of Solomon, these verses describe intimacy between a husband and a wife. Sexual impression is given by God for the delight of married couples. When marriage is viewed chiefly as a business agreement, human passions seeks other outlets. It's not a business agreement, y'all. All right, back to verse 21. Finally, for the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. His own iniquities entrap the wicked man, and he is caught in the cords of his sin. He shall die from lack of instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. Now, there is a picture of this, the price of immorality, and it's on verse 4. So I'm going to jump back over to verse 4. Verse 4 says, but in the end, she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Now, the picture of this says Proverbs portrays the price of immorality and with numerous metaphors. Word pictures scattered throughout much of the book. The price of immorality is high. It is not all luxury and pleasure with no afflictions. Proverbs gives a much more realistic picture. Here are some of the pictures of the effects of immorality painted by Proverbs. Her house leads down to death, and her paths to the dead. Chapter 2, verse 18. In the end, she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Chapter 5, verse 4. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lie hold of hell. Chapter 5, verse 5. His own iniquities entrap the wicked man, and he is caught in the cords of his sin. Chapter 5, verse 22. Can a man take fire to his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Chapter 6, verse 27. Can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? Chapter 6, verse 28. Wounds and dishonor he will get, and his reproach will not be wiped away. Chapter 6, verse 33. He went after her as an ox goes to the slaughter. Chapter 7, verse 22. Now that wraps up. Hey, Teresa, welcome in. Didn't see you jump in here. Glad you're in here. Let's jump over to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 through 20, and let's put on our armor, y'all. Get ready for the day. Protect us against what lies out there. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand, stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on a breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints, and for me, that utterance may be given to me, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that in it I may speak boldly as I ought to speak. And now we're prepared to face the day. Andy, I hope you're still with us, but if you're not, we totally understand. God bless each and every one of you guys. Good crowd in here this morning. Hey, it's election day. If you hadn't already, get out there and vote, y'all. I challenge each and one of y'all to be a blessing for someone else today, and just say God bless y'all, and we'll see you again in the morning. Thank you for joining me.